Cloud Imperial Games is about to close its most impressive funding year to date. With 24 ships and vehicles released throughout the year, CIG broke all previous records by collecting more than $150 million in funding. On the surface, this looks like an incredible success and a validation of the long-standing ship sales model that has supported Star Citizen's development since the very start of the project. However, when this performance is examined a bit more closely, a more nuanced picture emerges, one that raises important questions about sustainability rather than success alone. While funding reached new heights, the number of new accounts created this year is roughly half of what it was last year. This discrepancy suggests that the bulk of the revenue is increasingly coming from existing backers rather than a growing influx of new players. In other words, Star Citizen is mostly funded by a mature audience that already owns many ships, sometimes entire fleets. That in itself is not a problem, but it introduces a long-term risk, which is ship fatigue. Even highly engaged and supportive backers can eventually reach a point where new ship concepts no longer feel necessary, exciting, or meaningfully different from what they already have. This fatigue is closely tied to another growing issue: ship redundancy. As the roster expands, it becomes increasingly difficult to justify why a new ship needs to exist when there are already several fulfilling the same role with only marginal differences. When players begin asking themselves why they should buy yet another ship that does essentially the same thing as the one that they already have, the model starts to show cracks. At that point, relying almost exclusively on ship sales exposed CIG to the risk of a weak sales year, not because of declining interest in the game, but because players simply feel done with ship purchases. Of course, none of this means that CIG should stop selling ships. Ship sales remain a core pillar of Star Citizen's funding and identity, and will probably stay so for the foreseeable future. However, they should no longer be the only pillar. Diversifying revenue streams would reduce financial risks while also allowing ship design to slow down, breathe, and avoid unnecessary overlap. It could also give the ship team the time it needs to finally tackle that backlog of ships that have been sold for a dozen years and still haven't materialized in the game. Banu Merchantman, anyone? Fortunately, Star Citizen already contains several underdeveloped systems that are perfectly suited for non-intrusive, non-pay-to-win monetizations. Cosmetic sales are the most obvious example. While cosmetics already exist in the game, they often feel like an afterthought rather than a fully realized system. The game would benefit enormously from a broader and more deliberate approach to visual customization, particularly in areas players interact with daily. For example, ship interiors, cockpits, habitation modules, and quite frankly, personal environments like these seem far more compelling targets for monetization than endless new halls. Items such as coffee machines or interior props, cockpit decorations, and other flair elements would allow players to personalize their ships, hangars, or habitation modules without affecting gameplay balance. Some of these were even discussed as stretch goals in the past, like cockpit decorations, making their absence all the more noticeable. Character customization is another area where Star Citizen lags behind expectations. After nearly a decade, clothing options seem to not have changed that much, right down to identical underwear, although there have been some improvements after the introduction of dynamic cloth technology. While this might sound trivial, it speaks to a broader issue: identity expression. Players are far more willing to spend money on character customization than on power, and expanding cosmetic options for characters would be a low-risk, high-acceptance revenue stream that aligns well with modern live service standards. And please, CIG, do give us better underwears for our characters. I know it sounds weird, but I think it will be better. One of the most promising long-term opportunities, however, lies in crafting and blueprints. Once crafting systems are fully implemented, CIG could introduce blueprint sales that follow the same pay-to-skip philosophy already used with ships. These blueprints would not provide exclusive advantages and would remain earnable through gameplay, but purchasing them would allow players to bypass time-intensive acquisition paths. Blueprints for weapons, ship components, base modules, and decorative elements could all fit naturally within Star Citizen's industrial ecosystem. Visual differentiation would be the key here, with purchase blueprints offering unique aesthetics rather than superior performance. This approach has proven extremely useful in other long-running online games and would integrate seamlessly with Star Citizen's future economic simulation. Base building further expands these possibilities. When land bases and space installations become fully playable, customization will be essential. Architectural styles, interior themes, lighting options, and environmental aesthetics could all be monetized without impacting gameplay balance. In that context, the return of land claims could also make sense, providing that they are handled carefully and remain limited in scope. As with ships, the goal would not be exclusivity of power, but ownership of identity and space. Personal hangars represent one of the clearest and most immediately viable opportunities. At present, everyone's hangar looks exactly the same, which undermines the sense of ownership that Star Citizen otherwise emphasized so strongly. While generic hangars encountered during normal gameplay can remain standardized, a player's home or starting hangar should feel unique. Sure, right now we can decorate our personal hangars with decorations, some of which can be bought on the store, but offering actual cosmetic variations in structure, lighting, layout, maybe additional rooms and living space and atmosphere would allow players to define their personal space while keeping gameplay completely unaffected. This is the kind of feature that feels less like monetization and more like a natural evolution of the game. Organization headquarters also take this concept further. Orgs are of course a central pillar of Star Citizen's social structure, yet they lack meaningful visual identity. Of course, we know that this is coming, we saw that in previous season cons, but still, I think it's time to already think about how CIG could perhaps monetize orgs a little bit. For example, allowing org headquarters customization through a web-based interface similar to the 300 series configurator would be both elegant and practical. Org colors, logos, interior themes, and branding could be configured outside the game, avoiding UI complexity while reinforcing the idea that organizations are persistent entities. This would also open the door to optional cosmetic monetization tied to group identity rather than individual advantage. What all of these IDs have in common is that they monetize presence, identity, and expression instead of power and progression. That distinction is critical. Players are generally willing to support a game financially when they feel that they are enhancing their experience rather than bypassing it. By expanding into cosmetics, personalization, crafting blueprints, personal spaces, and organizational identity, CIG could significantly stabilize its revenue without over-relying on an ever-expanding ship catalog. And just to make things clear, this video is not an argument against ship sales, it's more an argument for balance. I am convinced that Star Citizen has reached a point in its life cycle where diversification is no longer optional, but necessary. By shifting ship sales from being the foundation of funding to being one pillar among many, CIG can reduce risk, preserve player enthusiasm, and build a more sustainable future for the project. And so that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching until the end. As always, a big shout out to my Patreon and YouTube members who really make all of this content possible, especially to Dudlin for becoming our latest YouTube member. Thank you so much. I will see you guys in the next one for more videos. We've got a really long one here about all the FPS content that's coming to Star Citizen. I hope to finish it before the end of the year. It's gonna be quite awesome. I'll probably live stream on Twitch as well. You have the link in the description down below. And let's not forget to thank also our Patreon and YouTube members, including Dr. Farbin, Sokartasisius, Ducky2Ducker, Shadow Rise, and Zero Crusher. I have been Erad. I'll see you guys in the next one.